Alrighty. And after a moment away with the podcast, we are back with another episode and with a new dietitian to the team, Miss Amy Adams. Definitely excited about this episode because we've talked about, I would say, some muscle building with Nick Newport. This was a couple months ago now at this point, a couple episodes ago about muscle building, but we didn't do it specifically for the female. And that's what I want to be talking about today with you, Amy. And I do think that right off the bat, I want to say that so that women can stay into this episode, that it's wild the amount of women who are underfueling for the physique that they desire. Like they'll see a physique and they're like, I want that. I want the muscle. But then they'll undereat, overtrain, and or just do all the wrong things to achieve said goal physique. So that's what I want to talk about today and why they're not building muscle. And so today we're actually going to break down what actually works with Coach Amy.
Yeah, definitely. So I completely agree with you, first of all. I think that a lot of women, especially in this day and age of social media, there's so much information coming in, and a lot of that information is targeted at women. A lot of misinformation, too. So what I see most of the time is just women trying to kind of throw things at the wall and see whatever sticks. But I completely agree with you. One of the biggest things that I see are just women afraid of eating, and they don't realize that eating, that caloric consumption is what's going to level up their training, level up the physique that they are aspiring to.
100%. I see it. We both see it all the time. And before we dive all the way into that, because I want to talk about all of that, I want to bust some myths and stuff, but I want everyone to know who you are first. Let's go there first. So dietitian, love it. That's why you're here with us at NC, and bikini competitor too. You just recently had a competition. I say recently, it's not, I guess, that recent now, several months ago, but I guess what brought those two things together and why. I guess I want to learn. I don't want the audience to learn the how and the why between you and muscle building and bikini competitions and all of that as a dietitian.
Yeah, so first I'll bring it back. So I've been a dietitian for a little over 10 years now, which is crazy to say.
Incredible.
I think it'll be 12 years this July. So it's been a pretty long time. And what I mainly do, so my full-time job, I work in corporate wellness, working with different companies to elevate their health and biometrics. So we try to keep their health and wellness good so that their insurance doesn't have to pay as much on the back end. So that's what I do in my day to day. And then obviously coming on with you guys, I love coaching, love lifestyle clients. So that's why I'm here. But integrating my background as a dietitian into bikini bodybuilding, I have kind of I guess you would call it a sad, I don't want to say sad, but a sad story. So a couple years ago, I actually went through in vitro fertilization with my husband. We were trying to have children. And during this time, if there's any women that are listening to this who have gone through IVF, you know that it's a point in time in your life where you feel it's an out of body experience, right? Like you're not in control of your body at that point. There's things going on outside that are manipulating what is going on inside. So that was a point in my life where I felt very out of control in my own body. And this was also a point where I was very deep into social media. And as a lot of bikini competitors, if there are any bikini competitors listening, I feel like it's very cliche, but the first thing I saw was a video of Ashley Kaltwasser, who is like the bikini goat. And she's about my age. She's a little bit older, a couple years older than me, but I saw her physique and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is what I aspire to." Like always been active, always been going to the gym, but the extent to what I was doing in the gym was I knew how to squat, I knew how to deadlift, I knew how to walk on the incline tread, but other than that, I had honestly no idea what I was doing, and that was 5 years ago. within that span of time, those 5 years, I went from, not really knowing much about bodybuilding or sports performance to like delving deep into that. And Alec, I think you can relate to this just as dietitians. Like once we grab onto a certain aspect of nutrition, you get so into that. It's like an obsession.
Yep.
So that was what I did. I researched until my eyes were dry, trying to figure out how to get that physique. And from that, I figured out, the macro approach, how many calories I need to be eating, how to be consistent, and also the movements I need to do in the gym to get to that physique. As a dietitian, just knowing that actually seeing what my body was capable of with what I was putting into it was what really like brought that to fruition for me.
It's insane. Yeah. You can manipulate the inputs to get crazy outputs. And those inputs really boil down to structure and consistency. And like you said, knowing the amounts, right? So like the inputs for food, knowing how much of each macro and calories on a daily basis and how to manipulate that. And same with the training side too, like not just going in and hitting random stuff like, oh, I saw somebody do this exercise, I'll do this, but actually working on control and intent and form and execution. It's not, I mean, same for me. Like for the longest time, I was just going to the gym hoping to get results, like, oh, if I just go to the gym, I'm going to look like that guy. But no, that guy actually has this dialed in, and this dialed in, and he goes on a very routine basis. And so it's the same for women. And I think that's often overlooked between like men should do this and women should do this. Well, we're both human. Yes, there's different hormonal and physiological things, but at the end of the day, building muscle comes down to a strategy with food and a strategy in training, whether you're male or female. So I love it. Let's keep it going. It's great to have you on, and because I've been wanting to do this for a hot minute now, but we finally got the time to do it. And I think it's fascinating that you were a dietitian for half a decade, then found bodybuilding and everything that it's now offering you. So let's kick this off with some myth busting. And there's a couple big ones, I would say, and especially for women. So let's go ahead and nip those in the butt, because I know there's a lot of women listening right now who might still believe these things. So I want to kind of break through those. So the first thing is, if I lift heavy, I'm going to get bulky. So walk me through why that's not the case.
So first of all, I wish, right? Because if I was doing what I've been doing for the past couple years, like I would be like Arnold Schwarzenegger by now. So you're definitely not going to get bulky. It takes a while for most women, I would say, to even build the desired muscle that they want. Like my physique that I had on stage took about 2 years to build. And not that it's, I think it's impressive, but it's not anywhere near as impressive as what you would see on the Olympia stage. So definitely not going to get bulky. I think what most women see as bulky, first of all, not to get controversial, but definitely performance enhancing drugs is what gives that bulky look.
Yep.
And also, outside of performance enhancing drugs, just eating well beyond your caloric requirements. So increasing your fat storage versus increasing your muscle storage.
100%. I think when people say, I literally had somebody say this to me yesterday. I want to gain muscle, but I don't want to get bulky. Literally word for word. They said, I really want like the clean, lean muscle. I'm like, okay, well, it's the same approach. We're just not going to overeat every day, because the bulky is likely from, in gym pop or even in bodybuilding, but natural bodybuilding, the use of performance enhancing drugs, bulky is usually body fat, is usually a mixture of gaining muscle with too much body fat. So then I think that stigma is, if I lift the weights, but it's not the weights, it's just excessive calories, or excessive is a kind of an extreme word. I would just say too long in a calorie surplus at the end of the day. And that's nothing against that person. It just goes to show the importance of both attention to detail with the gym stuff and attention to detail with the food stuff at the end of the day. simply put, right? Now, another one is the more workouts, work out 6, 7 days a week, go, 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 run your body into the ground. That's going to get you better results. That's going to get you leaner and bigger and, a bigger transformation. Is that the case?
Definitely not. And I will say that I fell victim to this just a couple years ago. Like, I think as dietitians, we're very type A, we're very perfectionist. So I thought, if I'm going 6 days a week, then 7 days a week is even better, which is not the case. So our muscles, when we're creating muscle, we're tearing them down. That's what, and the rebuilding is what's actually going to build the muscles. And your muscles aren't rebuilding when you're lifting, right? They're rebuilding when you're resting and when you're sleeping. So you need, right now I take 2 rest days, but even if you're somebody that's go, 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 even one rest day is appropriate. But I would say, 2 rest days, even better. So yeah, no, 6, 7 days in the week in the gym is not the way to go. And it's definitely going to increase your fatigue more, which means that the next time you're in the gym, you're not able to give your 100%, right? If I was going to the gym 7 days a week, not sleeping well, not having a rest day, I'm probably not going to give 100% of what I got, which is what we need to build muscle, is kind of going to that, getting into the RPE, rate of perceived exertion, 8 or 9. I'm probably going to only be able to do an RPE of like 6. So
Yep. And I think the the 6 to 7 days a week on top of, family, on top of daily stressors and responsibilities, on top of work, the you're just running off the rev limiter and in a sympathetic or sympathetically driven state, nervous system. You're never getting into a parasympathetic state, which is your literal rest and digest, recover, heal state. So if you are go, go, go all the time and you're not seeing results, you might need to do less and it might give you more. I do see that all the time. And that's more, I think, even more important for women than men, to be quite frank. I think, especially around, timing of menstrual cycle, I think we need to, like, women should lean into that versus try to push past it. And they'll have better, more effective workouts, like you said, with the higher RPE, more intensity. And then it's more fun that way too, when you're actually feeling good in your training and progressing in your training and not just showing up
yeah.
and going through the motions because you're exhausted
Yeah.
from
And the
both.
other thing I want to touch on that you bring up a good point is that a lot of times, women will work out the 5 days a week and take the 2 rest days, but they're doing a million things on that rest day. They're not actually resting. They're chasing around their kids. They're going to X, Y, and Z. They're doing all the household chores. And that is something in my bodybuilding experience that I've taken away, is that like a rest day is a true rest day. Like, yes, you can get in your steps if you want to go outside and take some steps, that's fine. But we're not going to do all these things that stress us out and push us over the edge.
Yep. And we still see it. Hey, coach, I know it's my rest day, but I want to do some cardio, or I want to go do this with a friend at Orange Theory, or we don't need to fill those gaps. We need to lean into those gaps. So you make a great point. And one final one I'd like to say is I think carbs are still getting a bad rap. I mean, we're in 2026, Amy, and I still hear folks talking about carbs being bad. Like, how can we flip that script? How can we really get it into folks' heads, especially women, that carbs are honestly, like, they're so important, but when you finally start, I guess, bumping your carbs a little bit, you can feel the strength improvement like that. You can feel the life get thrown into you when you have a little bit more carbs. And so how can we flip that script, Amy, of that carbs ruin body composition?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So much to say about this. First of all, I definitely fell into this trap when I first started out. So I would say, like, obviously as a dietitian, I ate pretty healthfully, but my diet for the most part before I started bodybuilding and trying to build muscle was mainly the salads, right? Like minimal, good, complex carbs and just like minimal calories, a lot of fat, which, fat supports our hormones, fat helps with enzymes, but not really what we need for performance. So, and then the other thing I will say is that it's so interesting to me because I agree, like not a lot of people fear carbs. And it's crazy because I'll be sitting down with, my extended family and we'll be passing around the plate, eating something and they're like, "Oh, you probably don't eat this." And I'm like, "No, that's the bulk of what I eat." Like carbohydrates makes up most of my
Yeah.
diet, which it should in general for most people.
Yeah.
But yeah, carbs are the thing that's going to fuel our performance. Our body prefers that, especially when we're in the gym. For strength training, we rely on what's called glycogen storage, which is our body's stored fuel in our muscle. And when our glycogen storage is low, we're not going to be able to have that really intense output. So that's why, right after the gym, we want to replenish our carbohydrate intake. And then really right before we go to the gym, we're eating to fuel our workout within that session, right? Like if you're not getting the carbohydrates before the gym, your blood sugar is probably extremely low and your body's going to have to pull from other parts of your body to create that blood glucose to get you going. So that's why it's really important before the gym, but also after the gym. And anything else you want to add on that?
I mean, I just love my carbs. And I know that my body knows within one day of having too little carbs, like it knows it. And performance is not the same, and it just doesn't have to be that way. So we shouldn't fear carbs, but we also shouldn't fear protein or fats or calories. Period. But let's go. I do want to kind of go into on the topic of nutrition for muscle building. I think it's a little bit of a mindset shift of understanding of what it's doing. It's not just eat less, eat less, eat less, and that's going to make me look like amazing. Like, you have to have health and vitality. You have to have nourishment. You have to have you know unless you want brittle nails and dull skin and hair falling out and poor performance and mood instability too. I mean, let's talk about that. Like, it's not just performance in the gym that's going to build the muscle. It's the day-to-day energy, having enough energy to actually get through your day and not feel like a zombie. So I want to talk about what enough food or calories really means for women in strength training. I want to talk about protein. Yes, carbs. We kind of touched on that. And then a little bit of like performance-based eating versus fear-based eating. So let's talk, I guess I want to talk about your specifics a little bit. If you're okay with sharing, like what things look like when you're trying to build muscle in, say, an off season. Like, give us a representation of enough food. So if, like, for you, and we don't have to go into crazy details, but I'd love to share some regarding, maybe calories or carbohydrates or something. Cause I think women think that they need 60, 70, 80 carbs a day to get like aesthetic physique that they want. And it's just not the case. So when you're trying to build muscle, say you're not in season right now, walk us through a little bit of like actuality for you, if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, sure. So I would say, just a disclaimer, I would say I'm a little bit above average for most women. Over the years, have realized that I have very high metabolism. It's interesting. I'm a very hard gainer, but toward the end of my prep, I was also a very hard loser. So we had to crush me kind of on both ends. So right now, do you want me to get into like my specifics, like macros, I
Let's
guess?
do it. Let's do it.
Okay,
I like
so
real.
protein is at 135, which I would say is in general pretty standard for most women. I think a lot of women think they need or they eat way less than that, just on a day-to-day basis. So 135 protein. I actually don't even know. I think it's 375. Let me look. My carbs are I respond very well to carbs, which is one thing that, individualized coaching is really important for because some people respond better to a higher fat
Mhm.
macro wise, and some people respond better to higher
Certainly.
carbs. And on the back end, when you're trying to lose weight, it's, the same thing, cutting carbs versus cutting fat. So I am at 380 grams of carbohydrates, which just for like reference, I'm 13 weeks post show. And the height of my bulk, I was 410 carbs and an 800 calories. So I'm almost back to where I was like peak bulk, which I hate the word bulk because I think it reinforces the whole bulk
Bulkiness. That's a good point.
thing. So I like to call it a build,
Yep.
but
I call it build or surplus. You're exactly right. Yeah.
yes, exactly. But it's in my head, the bulk. And then 65 grams of fat, 65 grams of fat.
That's
So
so good. 380 carbohydrates.
yeah.
There are women that are going to be listening to this, dropping their jaw saying, that's what I eat in a week, you know? And I'm serious. It is a real thing. And so, women listening, she's still lean, right? Looks incredible, and eating 380 carbs a day. Okay. A day. You're not missing a beat. It's not like you're doing that once or twice a week,
No,
daily, my friend.
daily.
So I hope, and I'm glad we did that and I'm glad you were willing to share that because you didn't make that up. Like you're really doing that. And, I bet training is off the hook right now. I bet it's so good.
Yeah. And
Strength.
I'm somebody that I am hitting my macros to a T every day. So it's not like I'm just like kind of guessing and giving you that number like day in and day out. That is what I'm eating.
Yes. Wow. That's incredible. And so calories now, you said like 28?
Almost 2,700. Yeah, a little bit less than that. And at the peak of my build, I was at 2,800. So I'm like kind of nervous because toward the end of your build, it's like you're you're downing like dried fruit at night, basically,
Yes. Oh
try
my.
to get those
For me,
calories in.
in the depths of a build, towards the end of them, I'm around 6, 7, 800 carbohydrates.
That's wild.
It is wild, and I haven't actually done that in a while. I've been more in of like a recomp phase, an extended recomp phase where I'm in a slight surplus versus like really pushing for growth. I work behind a desk so much, so pushing 6, 7, 800 carbs a day, sitting behind a desk. I do get my steps, but it doesn't change the 800 carb. Like that's a lot, and
Yeah.
digestibility just really starts to bog down, and I just don't perform well in my work and all of that. So that speaks on the individuality of preferences and goals, and obviously male versus female too, but
Yeah.
and lifestyle scenarios. But that was so good. So let's talk a little bit about you because you mentioned structure. You mentioned, which I'm a big fan of. I mean, if you want to do anything in life, there has to be consistency and structure. So when you build a business, same thing. When you want to build a physique, same thing. When you want to have a loving family, you have to have things routine. No matter what you do in life, there has to be those two things. And so talk to me about the structure that you have, but working flexibility into it. Now, you probably have a great bit of flexibility as your, build season goes. You get a little bit more flexible. We have to, or else we're going to be eating pounds of lettuce just, to get to 400 carbs a day. So walk me through what that flexibility looks like with the structure of you being dialed with your macros every day. I guess flexibility within that structure.
Yeah, so in a build phase, you obviously have way more flexibility, especially when you're eating as much as I am consuming now. So I would say, just making sure I hit and this is what I would say for mainly anyone, especially lifestyle clients, mainly trying to hit those macros or hit, whatever your goal is 80% of the time. So then like our 20 or even 9, like I'm like a 90-10 kind of person, 90% of the time, and then 10% having that flexibility. For me right now, that looks like, doing my macros 6 days a week. And then day 7, which is usually Saturday, I have my intuitive eating day. I will say intuitive eating for me has been a little bit harder post show because you're in such a routine of, hitting your macros every day, perfection, that type A personality comes out, but it's getting much better. And just like on the back end with the increase in body fat, which I think is another thing that women fear, your hunger hormones tend to regulate too. Post show, it was definitely hard for me to listen to my body, but now that I have a little bit more body fat on me, it has been easier. So, flexibility wise, with that intuitive eating day, I would say now the thing that makes me most structured in that flexibility, if you could call it, is that I'm still eating mainly the same things that I would eat on my structured days. I'm just maybe leaning into what I want a little bit more. So I'm still focusing on healthy fats. I'm still focusing on lean proteins. But will I add a hot chocolate in there? Maybe. So just having a little bit of flexibility and eating some things that I normally wouldn't that 80 or 90% of the time, but not overdoing it. And I think that really helps the other days of the week because if you're craving something, you need to lean into that craving, but not overdo it, right? And that's what's going to help keep us on track for the rest of the week. So focusing on fiber, focusing on hitting my water goals. I think that's something that's very, very overlooked. So still getting my 2 or 3 Stanleys a day in on my intuitive eating days, that still helps to give me structure within that flexibility, if that makes sense.
100%. And I love that, your coach has you doing that. I think it can be really, really beneficial just for the longevity of the sport as well. And I don't want to tie everything to bodybuilding because we're talking
Yeah.
about building muscle, whether you're in bodybuilding or not. It just goes to show you don't have to be, meticulous 24/7, like overly meticulous 24/7. And even within your other 6 days, it's not that, some people do prefer a meal plan of some sort where it's like the same thing every day, but you also have flexibility in that you can have, it doesn't always have to be the same thing. You can be flexible within that 2,800 calories or within the macros given. Like it doesn't have to be oats every morning. Maybe you do oats. Maybe you do English muffin. Maybe you do, what else is there for carbohydrates that I'm blanking on right now? Granola. There's sweet potatoes. I mean, and that's again the individuality, but also I guess speaks on nutritional flexibility, but nutritional understanding, like knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the more you're able to be flexible within said structure because you know what's going on. You know how to manipulate things, but within the structure that you're given. So I love that. And that was a lot about nutrition. I think I want to talk a little bit more about the nutrition side
Yeah.
because you did mention fiber, you mentioned hydration. And so with that, I think a lot of women are fearful that this is going to make them bloat. Water is going to make them bloat. I mean, I'm a coach. I coach a lot of women. I hear it all the time. It is something they're fearful of because I think there's a sensation of fullness that women mistake as bloat. And maybe men too, but like I think a lot of people under consume water because of the way it sits in their stomach. And they think that it's bloat and that's going to make them fat, but it has nothing to do with body fat. And it's just content in your digestive tract. And that's good. You want that. You want your digestive system lubricated so it can actually move the food through, have bowel movements, absorb the food, etc. So I guess, was there ever a moment where you had, like, as a woman trying to build muscle, that you either not feared water, and it sounds crazy, but in the way that I explained, like feeling weird sensations of, am I gaining body fat or am I just full from nourishment and hydration? Like there's a difference there. You don't always have to have an empty stomach for a flat stomach physique, you know? Am I
Right.
making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you said, like a lot of people go through life dehydrated day in and
Oh,
day out. So, like, the sensation that you're feeling is just feeling hydrated, which is what you should feel most of the time.
yes.
So, yeah, I mean, the thing with, again, I don't want to just bring it all back to bodybuilding, but like muscle building in general, is that you do have to hit your water goals. Water's very important for metabolism, for digestion, and especially if you're pushing hard in the gym 5, 6 days a week, you need probably a lot more water than you think you do need. So, and like you said, that matter just being in your stomach is what's going to make you feel larger or bloatier, for lack of a better word. So I think it was a little bit, I did feel discomfort when I first started. I've always been somebody that hydrates pretty well, but trying to actually hit my water goals for performance, not just like day in and day everyday life. It definitely was difficult. And I think the other thing that people don't like, not just like women in general, but just how often you're going to the bathroom too. And
Point.
especially for me, when I was toward the end of my prep, just trying to get that water in. And, it would come to 8 o'clock at night and I would be like, oh my gosh, I didn't hit my water goals. downing all that water, going to bed, and then having disruptions in sleep. So I think doing it correctly too, making sure you're spreading it throughout the day. Right now, like something that's really helped me is trying to kind of front load my water intake into like, the first 4 or 5 hours that I'm awake because I like to have no disruptions in my sleep at night. So I think that's definitely really helped me. But I do agree, you're going to feel that bloat feeling or that larger feeling, but it's mostly just your cells saying, I'm happy, I'm hydrated, which a lot of people don't experience day in and day out.
Yeah. And I think when your muscular tissues are adequately sufficiently hydrated, those muscular contractions in the gym feel so much better. It doesn't feel like beef jerky dry. When you rip a piece of beef jerky in half, it's so dry. And that's kind of what like a dehydrated contraction. I mean, it's literally dehydrated protein. That's what beef jerky is, right? So picture that, trying to squeeze that versus moving a raw steak around that has the moisture still in it, right? It's going to be so much more fluid and you're going to be able to actually have those contractions, which we know contractions and force production and tension and stimulus. That's what muscle building is all about. So the water is essential for, like you said, metabolism and digestion, but also performance and muscular contractions for muscle building, which actually kind of segues us into our training component of our conversation today, which is also extremely important. So we've talked about hydration, we've talked about carbohydrates, we didn't talk much about sodium, but sodium is another one that attracts water and is kind of the taxi for your hydration throughout your body and how, it kind of gets to your cells and everything. But let's go into our training topic because I want to talk about volume. I want to talk about intensity. I want to talk about frequency. And we kind of talked about rest days, right, already and the importance of those. But I'd love for you to kind of cover, like, do you count the amount of sets that you do each week? Like, are you structured on, like you talked about with your training or your nutrition? Are you like that with the training too? I assume yes, but I want the listeners to hear it. And how you're not just going into the gym, hitting a couple things of that and a couple things of this. Like there is a plan, I'm sure, there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Which is crazy because back when I didn't have a plan, like I look back on that and I was like, how did I know what I was even doing? Because now I'm so structured, which we use Trainerize with Nutrition Collaborative, but there's also a couple different apps out there that I use heavy. I don't know what everyone else is
Yeah.
using, but yeah, so I program in my workouts and I do the same thing on the same days. And I have a particular amount of sets that I do. I don't really deviate from that. It's usually anywhere from like 3 to 4 sets. And I'm programming in how much weight I'm doing within those sets. And hopefully, if everything goes well, I'm progressively overloading. So I'm trying to increase the weight. Not every week. That's not going to happen. It's not even going to happen every 3 weeks, but tracking that. So I think that's another thing that women really struggle with, especially with the social media presence of people that don't know what they're doing, telling people what to do, is that they're just going into the gym. They're seeing, whoever the new social media girl is, what they're doing, and they're going into the gym and they're trying to replicate that. And then the next week, they're seeing another workout plan on Instagram or something, and they're going in and trying to do that. And that it's good for every day if you're somebody that just lifestyle wise wants to get healthy and go into the gym and do that. But if you're actively trying to build muscle, what works is the boring stuff, right? The repetitive, same exercises, same amount of sets, and
Structure again. Yeah. And I think, I mean, when I started, it was always like, yeah, German volume training and how much volume can I fit in a day? And the pump is everything. And if I can't feel my arms, that means it's a successful workout. Like, or if I can't shampoo my hair in the shower after that, that means it worked. That was perfect. But that's when I was seeing the least gains, is back in those days. I think it really started to click when I started documenting my sets, my reps, my weights, and not doing a different random workout from a different influencer every time I got in the gym. I think you can learn fun new things from them and, get inspired by that, but to integrate into your structured training program, but not, obviously, you don't want to just like lean into like, oh, you just got to shock the body every time you get it. There's no such thing as that, right? We want to actually not shock the body. We actually want to adapt the body and do the opposite. So
Yeah. And something that you mentioned, just with soreness too, when I was reviewing the notes this morning, like I looked at that and I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't felt sore in so long. And I think that's what a lot of people think. To build muscle, you need to feel sore every single time you go to the gym. And yes, that does come along with building muscle. The first time you do an exercise, especially if you're pretty new to the gym or coming back after a long period of not being in the gym, when our muscle breaks down, that's why you're feeling sore. But over time, me doing the same, again, the boring, repetitive stuff over and over again, I barely ever feel sore. I mean, right now I'm on, I think, week 12 of the same set, the same training block. And I couldn't even tell you the last time I felt sore. So once our bodies kind of adapt to that movement, even if you're progressive overloading, you're not going to feel that, I can't walk up the stairs every single time. That typically comes from trying a new movement or being, new in the gym in general.
100%.
You feel like that too? That like never
100%.
sore
Now,
anymore?
my leg days are a little different, I'll say, in that. Like, I do get sore for, I would say, no other muscle group for that is like that for me. But leg day for me, I've just learned with the help of some training partners of how to really push it to the next level of intensity. And so I am wobbling and hobbling for days after every leg day. Bad. But I don't feel that way with my shoulders, my arms, and I train them hard too. They're just as hard. So I think it's just a individual thing. But I do like, yeah, I don't get, unless like you said, I try a novelty exercise or like something new or a new machine, new movement pattern or whatever, then of course you're not going to be adapted to it, but then you're not going to be able to progress it if you're always changing that. So you have
Right.
to do the same thing over and over again. However, I want to talk about exercise redundancy within the same session, right? So, like, I think a lot of women and men too. I mean, a lot of folks will do, without a structured training program, they'll do, dumbbell shoulder press and then go do machine shoulder press and then go do some other shoulder press. And it's like, we don't need to like your muscles if you're in a structured training program, you actually don't need to do a bunch of different machines for the same movement pattern, you know so you don't need machine lateral raises and then dumbbell lateral raises and then cable lateral raises all in the same day, split that up throughout the week. So I think for me, I truly used to do that. Like I used to just do shoulder day and it was just lateral raises after lateral raises after lateral raises. So it was one, it was junk volume, and two, it was exercise redundancy. So and they weren't responding. I was also underfueling myself. So it's like there, it comes full circle when we don't have those things in order. So tell me what grows your physique. I know you obviously, mentioned the, your specific training of like 12 weeks, same thing all the time, but what would you say builds your glutes the most, specifically your glutes?
That's a good question. So, going off of what you said, definitely like starting off with like two compound movements. So, usually that's for me hip thrusts. So, I'd say, every single bikini competitor, I would be shocked if a bikini competitor didn't have hip thrusts in
Oh yeah,
there.
I would hope they are.
Yeah, so something like hip thrusts, then going into like a leg press or a good morning. That's typically like my next thing. And then finishing up with something like RDLs or cable kickbacks, like more of those kind of like accessory movements. So, and just making sure I'm kind of hitting every single part of the leg. Like you said, I don't even know, but I wouldn't do the same thing for working the same muscles. Like you kind of need the compound movements, the larger like hip thrusts or squats. And then that's kind of building that muscle. And then I like to say that the accessory movements are kind of like marinating that muscle.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I would like structure my leg days, and then pretty much same thing with the shoulders. So like a shoulder press into another thing is that just like trying to hit the different parts of the shoulders too, which has been really difficult for me because I'm somebody that I don't really see a lot of progression with my rear delt. So like if I'm just doing front like shoulder presses all day, that's pretty much just hitting like the front side of my delt. I need to also work the rear delts by doing like rear delt cable flies or using like a reverse pec deck to hit that rear delt. So I think that's another thing. Like a lot of women will just go in and do like shoulder press and flies and be like, okay, I hit every single part of my shoulder, but you're not. You're pretty much just hitting that front delt and not focusing anywhere on the rear delt.
100%. And I think if they're chronically just doing a bunch of shoulder pressing, they're just, wearing that out and almost messing up their physique by overdoing one area because you're not getting the antagonist, you're not getting the opposite way. So
Yeah.
just like that would literally be like doing a curl or curls all the time and never doing a tricep extension. It's like, well, how do you expect? So exercise selection and then avoiding a proper and strategic exercise selection for the muscle that you're trying to target, but then also not trying to overdo that tissue with exercise redundancy, because then you're just going to get too much metabolic buildup and you're not actually going to get a response to stimulate muscle growth. You're just going to get pump after pump after pump and no response. Um,
And something else I do want to touch on, I don't know if we were going to bring this up a little bit later, but I think another thing that I see with women is just wanting to do leg days, which I would say is the opposite for men. Like a lot of men that I see in the gym just specifically want to do upper days. But the thing with that is that if you're only focusing on legs, you're not creating, which I would say I'm making a generalization here, but most women want that hourglass shape, which is what the bikini division is. And the thing that is going to get you that hourglass shape, yes, big glutes and thighs and hamstrings and everything, but also having that taper. And that taper is going to come from working your shoulders and also working your lats. So I think a lot of women shy away from upper days and for good reason. Society has kind of pushed it on us that we need to be focused on our lower. And it can be kind of intimidating to walk into the gym and go into the upper section where most of, I would say 90% of people in there are men. But that's really what you need to focus on as well to create that V taper or that hourglass shape.
Nailed it. 100%. Upper body is just as important as the lower body. Every muscle in the body, too, I think is really important to train. Obviously, some bikini competitors don't train chest or anything like that, and I get that. But I like utilizing all muscles, whether, and maybe it's more of a functional movement for chest. Like maybe it's a medicine ball throw, but like just incorporation of, as a, again, because we're talking about muscle building, not necessarily just bikini competitors. So recruitment. Muscle recruitment. So if you are never turning a muscle on ever, like your rear delts, it's going to be really hard to then train that muscle. So I think targeting that tissue specifically and learning how to load it, load it, load it, that is the key to muscle building and training for no matter who you are.
Yes.
But I think we've talked about nutrition, we've talked about training, we have to talk about recovery. How can we get folks to believe in recovery? How can we how can we prove to them that results are built on rest days? I I'm trying so hard over here, and it's hard to get that understood by a lot of people, especially women.
It's probably the hardest part, right? Especially for women. I think one is just like seeing is believing. If you're following our advice, hopefully you're hopefully feeling better in the gym, right? You're feeling more energized, you're feeling more energized throughout your day. And you're seeing results too. So I think just believing that what we're saying is correct and following that. But I don't know, it's hard to get. I feel like that's the hardest part to get people on board with sleep and stress management.
It is. I think a lot of women just haven't felt what proper sleep does over not just one good night or two good nights of sleep, but like weeks on end of what that will lead to, and the performance that can come from that. And therefore the results that come from that. So I do think, yeah, sleep, stress management. I think overdoing cardio will take from your recovery capacity. I think having a very stressful job can take away from your recovery capacity, especially if it's like a labor intensive job, like physically. And that speaks on the individuality of each client as well, or each person as well. That maybe the nurse who works 12-hour shifts and is go, 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 maybe she doesn't need a step goal. Maybe she needs a step maximum and a step limit. I've literally I have people right now on step limits so that they can actually get into a enough of a parasympathetic state of recovery to then get a response and get their energy back and stuff like that. So to me, that's huge is yeah, stress management, sleep, properly fueling, of course, with nutrition. And so how do you see, Amy, with your realm and your coaching, I guess, what do you see in women the most with sabotaging? Is it usually all of those? Is it usually a lack of sleep and poor nutrition, or not poor nutrition, insufficient nutrition and erratic training, or what would you say is a combination of all of those things? Like, what do you think is the biggest issue?
I think it's combination, which is the hardest, really. And I think it's, again, going off of generalizations here, I think it's a lot easier to tell men to slow down than it is women because women run the household, right? I like to say they're like the project manager of the household. They're doing literally everything. Telling them they have to slow down, it's like, well, now I'm taking time away from my kids, or I'm taking time away from my husband, or I'm slacking on my, the housework that I have to do. And then add a full-time job on top of that, it's a lot. So I would say it's a combination. Under fueling definitely is something that's slowing them down. You feel so much better. I remember, not to bring it back to my prep, but going from being 100 grams of carbs a day and just adding like 80 grams of blueberries more, it totally changed my outlook for the rest of the day and changed like how I felt energetically in the gym. I would also say most women, again, generalization, are overdoing cardio. So a lot of times I'll walk into the gym and I'll do my whole entire session. And somebody who walked into the gym at the same time as me is still on the treadmill. So that's an hour and 20 minutes that they just did cardio. And now I see them going into the weight room. And it's like, you don't need to be, again, the kind of throwing stuff at the wall. You don't need to be you're doing too much. It's not helping you in any way, right? And I can't even imagine doing an hour plus of cardio and then trying to function and go to work and show up for my kids. That
Right.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, it's so much. It's just strain, 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 and no build, build, build. It's just tearing them down. And I don't, I see it every day in, in coaching. And that's, I think one of the biggest things is not getting people to the gym. I think it's a lot of times getting them out of the gym or out of their mindset around, I have to be flying a mile a minute 7 days a week. And that's going to provide what? Like, what's going to come of that.
Burnout.
That's why you've not seen the results that you've been wanting. You've been doing that for a decade,
Yeah.
very good points. This is so good. I think I want to wrap it up here soon. We've talked about a lot for muscle building, especially for women, but a lot of this does apply to males, but I'm going to tie it back to women here for a little rapid fire round to close things out. So I want to ask you, Amy, and I think I might already know the answer because of what we just kind of talked about a little minute ago here, but one exercise that you would never remove from a woman's training program.
Probably hip thrusts. Yeah.
Hip
If I had
thrust.
to say one
Yeah,
thing.
I would agree. So here's something though. A lot of women don't have a hip thrust machine in their gym. Then I would probably go to barbell hip thrusts. Sure, it might take a little bit more time to set up and you got to throw a pad on the bar and all of that. It's worth it. I'll say it is worth the extra mile. I'd rather have you spend, the extra 5 minutes of doing that than 5 minutes doing an exercise that doesn't matter, to build the glutes. So that would definitely be one. Go
That's
ahead.
great. That's what I have now. Is I
Barbell.
So we have a hip thrust machine, but the belt, it just hurts I mean, once you get into the 200 range, it just hurts way too much.
Yeah,
So
it
that's what I
digs
use
in skin.
now.
Yep. So barbell. Nice.
You can use a Smith machine too, depending on how much weight you have on there. It's a little bit more awkward and clunkier, I would say, but you can also use a Smith machine for that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people travel. So here's another one. They travel to go to hotels and there's nothing, not even a barbell. So I like B stance dumbbell hip thrusts because, and the reason I say B stance is because usually a 50-pound dumbbell is not going to be enough to really, you know, for both legs to drive and actually get a lot of growth from. You could up the rep range, but it's usually still not the most impactful. We want to be pretty heavy. So I like, a dumbbell like on kind of on the pelvis and then B stance, single leg hip thrust. And that usually and you can get a little bit more isolated too with your brain, like focus on one glute at a time or one side of the glutes at a time. So that is so true. And then what would Amy say that the most underrated muscle building food is? Even though we know that it doesn't come down to one food, we'll say that as dietitians, that's not how it should go. But what's one underrated one if you had to say it?
Oh my gosh, underrated. I want to pick a protein food because I would say out of all the macros, protein is obviously the most, again, if I had to really like get general with it, most important. But also, if we're going off of just our discussion with carbs, I love potatoes. So, and
Yeah,
not just for muscle building, just for the general population, I think research has shown that they're one of the more satiating foods that we have. So not only are they super great for carbohydrates and helping with our glycogen storage, but they're also really great for helping to keep us full as well.
that's a great point. So I think, yeah, choosing potatoes is literally perfect because it's so multi useful or multifunctional. Like they also have fiber. They are filling and satiating. They fuel great performance. They're a complex carbohydrate, so they take longer to break down than, Jolly
Very
Ranchers.
versatile. Like you
They're
can have them for
versatile. Yeah.
breakfast. You can have them
Yeah, you
for
can have them
dinner.
for any meal. That's
Affordable.
You could have a loaded potato with beef and cheese and uh, tomatoes and on a potato. Like extremely versatile, multifunctional. It's a great food and they taste great. And sweet potatoes, Japanese sweet potatoes taste really good. I love Japanese sweet potatoes.
I can't find those many places, but
No,
yeah.
that is any HEB I've been to, I've not been able to find down here in Texas, which is strange because they usually have a lot. Maybe I'm just not looking hard enough. But okay, what would you say one myth you wish would disappear forever? And then we'll close it out.
Gosh, a myth. If I looked over this beforehand. Probably just that like under eating is the way to go. And just under eating and plus cardio equals perfect body. Because as we've talked about, like most women, I would say, aspire to that hourglass shape and curves, and under eating and doing cardio is going to get you the opposite of that.
100%. And what does that lead to? I mean, insufficient calorie intake. I mean, that's what's not, it's not just that it's not enough to support muscle growth. It's that it's not going to be enough to get you through your day, like optimally, if you're too underfueled. So it's not just about muscle building. I think it's also about everything else as a domino effect that comes from muscle building, insufficient calorie intake. So I love it. So
Hormonal balance as well. I feel like hormonal balance is such a buzzword now, but it's, a buzzword for a good reason. And underfueling is what's going to throw our balance of hormones off, for lack of a better word.
100 stinking %. This is a great episode on muscle building for women, men too, but muscle building for women who have been lied to or who are just
Misled.
misled and have a misunderstanding of how to do it the right way in a consistent base or on a consistent basis, on an onward sort of trajectory. So this is definitely intended to encourage strength training with intention and purpose and eating without fear. Grateful that you were able to show up today. Happy Friday, by the way. How's the weather? Is it supposed to storm again? I heard we're getting another countrywide stinking storm. Or is that coming toward you again this weekend?
Yeah, Sunday night.
I love, wow.
It's always the weekends too. It's like never when I'm hunkered down working. It's like, oh, let's do this. Perfect timing when I want to be out and about.
Yeah, 2 weekends in a row too. I mean, come on. Well, stay warm. And we have another episode with Coach Katie coming. So everybody stay tuned for that one on autoimmune and nutrition. So that one's coming within the next 2 weeks, I believe. But thank you all for showing up today. I hope you all train hard, eat well, eat sufficiently, sleep, and recover. And I hope that this episode helps kind of break some of the noise and some of the myths that are out there around women building muscle. You don't have to get bulky. You won't get bulky. You can eat 380 carbs, and if you have a plan with your training, with your nutrition, you will get results. So thanks for coming on today. Any final notes or thoughts, Amy?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Well, thanks for being here. We'll have to have you on again, and keep being great, keep being a great coach. And I've been loving your content lately too. It's been good on YouTube. Where else can people find you?
Instagram, Amy Adams Nutrition. Yep. And I have a website too. Amy
And
Adams
what's the
Nutrition.
what's the YouTube called?
Amy Adams Nutrition across
There
the
we go.
board.
Type it in everywhere. Thank you so much, Amy. I hope you have a great one, and I really appreciate you for being on today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you soon.